lead.
Next to lead.
The incoming president.
Jubilate vote are waiting for you.
State money is not government money, it's workers' money. Do you agree with me? It is workers' money. So why should some people who are not contributors to the fund be controlling the fund?
Keep watching Magical GH.
Oh yeah.
Next to lead.
The incoming president.
Jubilate vote are waiting for you. Bawumia, we are top.
Bawumia,
Yes,
next to lead. Bawumia, next to lead. Yes, Bawumia.
Next to lead. Second coming of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
We are top. Incoming president. Now sure, who decides what?
The top. It is possible. It is possible. It is possible.
Bawumia.
about 650,000. So that was more than 95% of our membership. I forgot to mention the Coalition of Concerned Teachers, CCT. Mr. Ali, jubilate! As I said, I think we'll do self-introduction about a few leadership, the front leadership of the forum. If you can introduce yourself, Your Excellency wants to know you by name.
Okay, I'm Dr.
The Vice President, His Excellency Alhaji Dr. Bawumia, except he appears before us today not in his capacity as the number 2 gentleman of the land, but in his capacity as the presidential candidate of the MPP. He's wearing another hat today, not as you do know him, but as a servant who has come before you to explain his vision and seek your support. Well, in doing that, His Excellency is not oblivious of the fact that the Constitution in Article 55 plus 16 forbids any organization to use as a collective its membership to support a particular political party. So he's not here to seek the support of the collective, that is of the organization, the forum. Of course, the members of the forum as individuals are citizens of this country and belong to communities. So I believe when he shares his opinions with you and you are convinced and persuaded, then certainly you may join the train and vote for him and seek support outside for him as well. But as I'm saying, he's not here to canvass the support of the forum. That one is prohibited by the Constitution. But as individual citizens, he appeals to you. If it touches your heart, then maybe you may pay tithe to him. Having said that, let me introduce those of us who are accompanying him. To my extreme left is your own Superintendent Minister. The Honorable Ignatius Bafo, who is the Minister responsible for employment and labor. Understands the language. He's a member of Parliament as well. He is not here in his capacity as a member of the manifesto team. Was here, we just invited him because he's the Superintending Minister, and we cannot come and meet you without routing it through. That's why we've done so. The minister here, Minister Kujo, is a member of Parliament for Ifia, and is the minister responsible for state enterprises. Again, the same reason why he's here with us. Then the deputy minister, I think he's the kid on the block because he's been appointed immediately, not too far away, not too distant. He is a member for Upper Denchira East, and he's the deputy minister at the back of the Honorable Bafo. That is why he's sitting behind him. He's in the shadow of the minister. Then we have the Honorable Rekun Broby. Ras Alfred. Yes. We need redemption in this age and time.
Thank you very much. One more round of applause for the closer band. So beautiful. I didn't know you were hiding such a good band amongst you. Please have a seat. Thank you very, very much. Relations and Pensions, Ignatius Bawumia, MP also for Sunyani West. The Minister for Public Enterprises and MP for Ifia, Honorable Joseph Kujo, the chairman of my manifesto committee and leader emeritus. That means he's a Mugabe in leadership. Honorable Osechi Mensa Bosu. We have the Deputy Minister for Labor, Employment, and Employment, Labor Relations and Pensions, who is here. Festus is here. And also a key advisor of mine, who is well known to you, Professor Amankwa, the former Director of the Ghana Education Service, Forum Chairman and leaders of the various members of the Forum here present. I have my own Deputy or Vice Chairman of my campaign, who has just walked in here, Honorable Nana Akomia, who is very well known to you. It is an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to have this meeting with you this afternoon. I've been looking forward to it, and as they say, today is the day that the Lord has made and made it possible for us to meet today. I'm here, as Chairman Sabonso said, in my capacity as the leader and the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party in this year's 2024 election, the 2024 election in December 7th. And as I am getting ready for this election, myself and my team are putting together a manifesto that we will bring to the country for this election. But as no one person or no one group of people is a repository of all knowledge, if you are doing a manifesto to help move this country, then the people who are going to be affected by those policies should be heard from and should have an input into this manifesto. And so we thought it very wise to have this meeting so that I can tell you what my general view is, the vision that I have, and then also listen from you, and listen to suggestions from you, so that I can take those, and my team who are here will also take all of those into account. So when we get back, we'll say, okay, what did the forum want to see in our manifesto? And therefore try as much as possible to align what we are trying to do with what the forum is saying. It's very, very important that we have this consultative process in putting this manifesto together. By way of background, have a relatively wide working experience. I have had experience in various fields. I have been a by-day worker on a farm. I have been a cleaner of dormitories. I have been a warehouse boy packing boxes. I was actually quite good at it. I have been a taxi driver. I have been a teacher. I've also been a professor. I've been a deputy governor of the Central Bank. And I've been a vice president of the Republic of Ghana. So it is possible. If you think about it, it is possible. It doesn't matter where you start from. God can make things possible. And today I'm seeking your support individually for and the country's support for the highest position in the land, the presidency of our dear country. For me, as a person, I have grown up very much caring about the less privileged in society. That has been my constitutional makeup. This is where I find the most joy in work. You know, how do we help people who are not as privileged as us? So you'll see me as patron of the Lepers Aid of Ghana, where I'm working very closely to see how best we can take care of the lepers in the country who have generally ostracized, and looking at how cured lepers can be taken care of. I'm also a patron of the Mother Teresa's Soup Kitchen, where we are focusing on helping street children to find a meal a day. You'll see me fighting for restoration of teacher and nursing training allowances that I have done. You see me fighting for hydroxyurea to be brought onto the NHIS for sickle cells sufferers, which we have been able to do. You see me fighting for the rental assistance scheme to help people who cannot pay 2 years rent in advance, or sometimes 3 years rent in advance, with a scheme that pays it for them and they just pay monthly. We've rolled this out and it has helped over 1,000 people so far that we've rolled it out. You see me working to help Kayaye, who will acquire skills and all of that in the process. So the sort of things I get very excited about, for the most part, in the public policy space has been policies that can help lift up people from poverty, people from vulnerability, and so on. I thought that today, coming to talk to you, I should maybe not focus too much on what government has done or what I have done per se. I think I gave a lecture on February the 7th to the country where I stated a lot about the various things that we had done in the area of infrastructure, digitalization, and so on. I think when the discussions come and I have to touch on some of those things, I will. But I think I want to focus more on the way forward. What I would like to do, God willing, if I'm given the mandate to be president of this country. What can we expect from a Bawumia government? And I think that would really inform our discussion. For the most part, and for the forum, I'll be discussing some of the policies I have in mind, but I think that at the end of the day, my outlook is framed around a number of questions that you will be interested in. How do we reduce the cost of living for workers? How do we improve conditions of service of workers? How do we ensure that pensions are adequate for workers? How do we ensure that workers can get access to credit? And so on. So these are some of the questions which, what I will be addressing at the global macro level will have implications for some of these issues that I'm raising. Because at the end of the day, if we have issues that are not resolved at the macro level, they have micro implications. So when I talk about the government and how we reduce the cost of living and create space as far as the fiscal is concerned is very, very key. One of the things that we have done over the years is that the size of government has grown. Some people say it has grown too large, but it has grown. And government seems to want to do so much in the economic space, build all the roads, build all the hospitals, and everything. In so doing, there's a burden that comes on government, and government is therefore in the process looking to either increase taxes or increase borrowing to do that. One of the key things I want to bring about is essentially to realign government expenditure and bring a part of it towards the private sector. Why do I say this? I think that we can provide a lot of the services without necessarily focusing on increasing government expenditure. The more government expenditure we increase, ultimately we have to tax more or borrow more. And when we have to do that, we create less space to increase the conditions of service of workers. If you have to spend a lot of your resources on paying interest, on loans and so on, you end up with less that is available for the people who are doing the work, who are essentially the membership that you talk about, over 90% of public servants in the forum. So I have had an experience which I believe we can take across. When you look at the whole digitalization experiment, the policy of digitalization that we have started here, one of the interesting things about the digitalization policy is that most of it, if not all of it, has been led by the private sector. Most people don't realize it. The Ghana card, digital address, and so on, Ghana.gov, the digitalization of the ports and so on, passport office, all of it is a private sector-led program, which has meant that we have been able to do something to serve the public without government putting upfront money to do these things. Because if the government was to fund all of these, we couldn't have even gone as far as we have gone in the first place. We wouldn't have done it. But with the private sector putting upfront the money and getting paid in bits over a long period of time, it means that the government didn't have to cough up that money in the first place. And so I think that that model is also very instructive in our general economic management. Because if you take it to the universities, for example, you'll see, for example, that you go to Tech or you go to Legon, the hostels are not built by government. They are built by the private sector. And the students are renting them, right? So you'll see that they are managed and built by the private sector. And we have that service. And you will see, therefore, that there's no delay in the completion of hostels, which are being built by the private sector. They build them very quickly because they know they are going to get some revenue coming out of that. And we can apply that philosophy across the whole country, whether you are talking of roads, whether you are talking of classrooms, you're talking of hospitals, you're talking of school buses. Government doesn't have to. Currently, if you're going to buy buses for 700 secondary schools, you have to accumulate all the money for the 700 buses and go and pay for them before you can distribute them. It then takes you a long time. So there are many schools which want buses and don't have buses because government doesn't yet have all the money to go and pay for the buses. So you can say that, well, the private sector give us a lease of 700 buses. They will upfront fund the 700 buses to the schools. Every school will have a bus, and we will pay them monthly or quarterly for the buses, for the use of the buses. And therefore, we don't have to look for that big money to do so. And therefore, the fiscal burden of providing these buses or so on will be much less. It's the same thing that we do with many, many pieces of infrastructure in the schools, for example. We could let the private sector do them, and we pay the private sector over time. And so and when we do that, this fiscal space opens up, and therefore we are able to improve the conditions of service of workers in a better way. But if your space is tight, you are not able to do so. So one of the things that I want us to do in terms of the fiscal space is to really move the burden, shift some of the burden of expenditure to the private sector. And we can provide those services government wants to provide without really putting up a huge expenditure upfront. And I'm looking at, therefore, shifting about 3% of GDP of expenditure from government to the private sector. And that will really open up a lot of space for government in terms of the fiscal space. I also want to make sure that in terms of control of government expenditure, we have an independent fiscal responsibility council to make sure that government's expenditure does not exceed 105% of the previous year's tax revenue, so that we maintain a lot of discipline in that sector. So fiscal discipline, along with opening up a lot of expenditure, realigning that expenditure towards the private sector. So that's one major reform that I want to do that will allow government the space to improve conditions of service. The other area that I want us to look at in Ghana, the new policy framework I want us to implement, is to change the tax system. The tax system we have lived with it since independence and maybe before. That's what we've inherited. I've been looking at our tax system for a few years now, and you can see that the general consensus, whether you are looking at individuals, the businesses, is that it is a burdensome tax system. It is not a transparent tax system. A lot of businesses come in countries. I found out that the most competitive country in terms of tax competitiveness, the number one country in the world in terms of tax competitiveness is Estonia. Estonia has been number one for the last 10 years in a row. So I found it very curious, read a bit about their system, and then took a team, including GRA and other people, and we went to Estonia to better understand their system and why it was so effective and people were so compliant. Their system is simple. It is a flat tax system. Flat tax is, if it's 10%, you know it's 10%. It's flat, right? Is it 15 or 20%? That is it. So it's very easy to understand for businesses and for individuals. And then you see that compliance is very easy. It's like the tithe we pay in churches. If it's 10%, it's 10%. So that is very, very simple to do. So that is what I believe Ghana should move to. Ghana should move to a flat tax system, very understandable, and move away from this colonial system that we've inherited since independence that is not working. Many businesses come in, they receive tax bills, and they are shut down because they are not able to pay those tax bills. They are locked up. When they are locked up, that means people's jobs are taken away, and so on. And I believe that a flat tax system will really help us. And I think that by the grace of God, when we get into office next year, what I want to do is to let us all start on a clean slate, a fresh slate for everybody. And that means for all of those tax system, and therefore we are coming with a tax amnesty. A tax amnesty, everybody will start on a fresh, clean slate, and everybody will be filing their taxes going forward very simply. Because as for the tax filing, it will take you 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's 10% or 15%. Just calculate it and you know what your tax is due. It's not complicated. But you see, one of the things that you may ask, okay, how will this now ensure compliance? When we came into office, only 4% of adult Ghanaians had a tax identification number. 4%. That means 96% did not have a tax identification number. So if you are GRA, you only have data for 4% who have a tax identification number. The rest you don't know. So when we came in, I made the suggestion that when we do the Ghana card, let's make the Ghana card number the tax identification number. And so this is what has happened. Now your tax identification number is your Ghana card number. So far we've issued to adults in Ghana over 17.6 million Ghana cards. So now you have the Ghana card number as your tax identification number. And immediately we have gone up from the 4% of adults with tax identification number. Now we have 85% of adults, from 4% to 85%. And you look at it from independence all the way to 2017, we had just 4%. Today we have increased from 4% to 85%, which means that GRA can tell now very clearly, because the Ghana card will tell you that these people should file, even if it is for zero taxes, they should still file. But now you know that these people have not filed. So you have the database to go after those who have not filed. And that is important, because most of the time, it is the formal sector, you and I, where the burden is on. It's not the informal sector. The formal sector is where the burden is on. And so whenever government feels tight or squeezed, they squeeze the formal sector to get more tax revenue. But if we can broaden the tax base and bring in more people, then the pressure on government to squeeze more from the formal sector reduces very, very significantly. So the flat tax system would allow, combined with the Ghana card and our tax identification numbers, will allow for more compliance in that sector. There's also a second leg of the tax reform that I want to look at, and that is to look at the import duty regime to match what we are doing for the income side. The import duty regime in Ghana is also one that traders and individuals who import have major problems with. Sometimes you import something and you think you're going to pay duty of, say, 5,000 cedis, but when it arrives, they tell you it's 7,000 or 8,000 cedis. And you may not be able to pay. They will confiscate the good and maybe end up selling it for 2,000 cedis. Isn't it? Yeah, they will sell it for 2,000 cedis. Meanwhile, you were prepared to pay 5,000. But they would have confiscated the goods and all of that. And so I want us practically to take away, and a lot of these have to do with changes in exchange rate through the period and so on. But I believe that if we say we shouldn't price in dollars, then we should start it at the port. Because if you start pricing in dollars at the port, it then reflects in the rest of the country. So if we believe in our currency, then let us price in cedis at a flat rate at the port. Let's price. So if a spare parts dealer is bringing in spare parts, I want flat rates so that the 40-footer container, you know that, okay, 40-footer is 20,000 cedis. and that is the flat rate. 20-footer is 10,000 cedis. So no matter when the container arrives, you know what the price is. It's very easy to comply with. It's rice, you know what it is. It's poultry, you know exactly what the flat rate is in cedis. And so, because if we keep pricing according to the dollar, there's an inflationary component of it, because the trader, when he's going to the market, he or she will increase the price to make up for the duties they had to pay, because there's no predictability. And not only are they increasing the price for today's duty, they'll start thinking, oh, if I finish selling and I'm going back, maybe it will change again. And then they will increase some more. And so there's this inflationary bias that is introduced if we don't bring predictability to the duty regime. And that's why I want us to do a flat rate in cities and bring predictability to the import duty regime. The next reform I want to bring about in the import duty regime is to look at our competitor neighboring country, which is Togo. Togo, the Lomé port and the Tema port are very close together. And so, because our duties tend to be higher than their duties, a lot of containers are smuggled through Togo, through Lomé, and then through our porous borders into Ghana. That is what happens. And so we don't get the revenue of those goods coming into Ghana through the Togo border. I want us to stop that type of smuggling. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to bring in a new policy that says that Ghana's import duty for any good cannot be higher than Togo's import duty. You set a cap. Our duty cannot be higher than Togo. When that happens, nobody will have the incentive to smuggle again through Togo, because you'll just be wasting your time and money and effort and all of that. So we want to cap the import duty so that you don't need, we can be lower, but we will not be higher. And that means that the goods will come through our ports and we will get the revenue from our ports. And that will change the whole mix. Just simple policies like that will help us in so doing. I want to also bring in a new policy as far as the power sector is concerned. As you know, we've had challenges over the years in the area of power. And a lot of it has come, when I look at where we are struggling, a lot of it has come through our dependence on fuel oils to generate power. Whenever we have challenges with fuel, we have challenges with power supply, by and large. But I want us as a country to move away from the fuel oils to solar power to generate electricity in Ghana. I want solar to be really the heart of the generation mix. Right now, we are not really using a lot of solar. So my policy over the next 4 years, God willing, is that we should bring in 2,000 megawatts of solar power. That is doable. 2,000 megawatts. That's more than half our consumption of electricity. You add that to Akosombo, then you have really brought down the cost of power in this country. So that will bring down the cost of living, will help businesses to produce more, because ab initio, our businesses are very uncompetitive, because you're paying 14 cents, 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Your competitors are paying 5 cents, 6 cents to produce the same good. You will have a problem. You can't compete. So I believe that if we can move towards solar power and bring in 2,000 megawatts to start with, it will be very good. When I announced this policy on February 7th, 2 major countries have come since that announcement to say each of them say they can do 2,000 megawatts in 4 years. And I said, oh, well, and maybe if you can do 2,000 each, then maybe we should do 4,000 so that each of you can do.
Come on.